Good evening. Good evening. How you guys doing out there? This Mike Melton back with From Pain to Purpose podcast, episode 2. I got a very special guest tonight, man. This brother has a very strong story, and I'm glad that we was able to link up for him to come on and share it with us, man. Right now I want to introduce you guys to Frank Gilliam. What's up, Frank? How you doing, man?
Hey, Mike, what's happening, man? Good to see you.
Man, I want to definitely thank you for coming on. I'm going on now so I could get this on your Facebook page. Share it so we could be live on there also.
Okay.
Yeah, Frank, man, how everything been going, man?
Life is good, man. No complaints. Steady as we go. You
It,
know, we have our ups and downs, but nevertheless, we still rolling.
Indeed, man. Frank, man, like I said, I want to thank you for coming on and going down your road from pain to purpose, man. And let's jump into it. Take me back to growing up as a child in Atlantic City, man. How was it? Like, what was your expectations and everything?
The Lang City that I remember was a very tight knit community.
Mm,
Uh, Post casinos changed a lot of that, but pre casinos, Atlantic City was a place where most people don't realize they had meadows. It used to
mm,
be it used to be areas of the town that looked like it was an actual park. We played in areas where most inner city kids wouldn't say that they had an opportunity. The back bay and the beach was our playground. So growing up in Atlantic City was good. But what I didn't realize growing up in Atlantic City, because the community was so tight, I did not realize until I got older that the city was split in two.
mm,
Uh, there's a north side, which is considered the cultural side, and then there's the south side, which is Pacific Avenue to the boardwalk. It's the south side, which you can pretty much call it the commercial district.
mm,
So growing up, uh, whether we was poor or not, I didn't feel that, um, because the community was so tight. Everybody looked out for one another. And as we fast forward now, I, um, I could say that the city prepared me to be the type of person I am, because at that time growing up, there was a sense of camaraderie. There was a sense of black pride and black love. I didn't have an encounter with a Caucasian kid in school until I went to junior high.
mm,
I may have had one Caucasian teacher in my entire elementary school experience. So it was a place where I got to see. I grew up where they call it Center City,
mm-hmm,
around Kentucky and Arctic, which at the time was the most bustling area for Black entrepreneurs in the city. You had the you had the you had the Club Harlem. You had the Lenders Room. You had you had so many infamous entities, but it was all people that looked like me. So me growing up, I did not have an ideology of there's no prosperity in people of color. So growing up in Lang City gave me the best of both worlds. And then when the casinos came, it brought this false sense of renewing the city, because it really didn't do that. Because
mm,
during the time, uh, many people don't know it, the North Side was generating somewhere around $76 million on its own. So
mm,
so publicly, the narrative was the city of Atlantic City is broke. We need to bring casinos, but that was for a personal and intentional thing for industry, which I don't have any bad or good things to say about it, because in life you encounter things and you realize what's for you and what's not, and understanding what gaming is in terms of how it plays out um, on a vibrational scale. I say it's very low because it presents something that isn't so godly. And
mm.
and when we took when we took the mantle of being the casino city of the East Coast, we actually made a deal with the devil, to a sense.
Mm. So take us into those years late adult teenage years. Hey, I do some research.
Yeah, yeah, that takes me back. Growing up as a teenager, let me divert back for a minute because I
Okay,
left a
okay.
very important point. My mom was murdered when I was 3 years old.
Mm,
So I was blessed enough to have a grandmother that took us in. That my two siblings and I'm the middle kid. I got a younger brother and an older sister.
mhm,
And if I could tell you that that might have been one of the most important transitions in my life, but didn't realize it, I end up gaining something during those years because when you're a young person, you really don't realize um, what your imagination can create in terms of your reality. So growing up, not having my mother, I also looked at it like, okay, I got a imaginary mother.
mm.
But at that time, I didn't know I was actually talking spirituality.
Okay, okay.
You know what I mean? I always knew that she existed, but didn't wasn't able to put the two together because of my age. But as I grew up, I realized that I grew up with a spiritual mother, which gave me a lot of oversight and insight to things that I can attribute for some of my success now.
Mm,
Then, but saying that, I also grew up very angry
mm.
because the person who actually took my mother's life was my dad.
Oh.
So I grew up angry, but basketball and sports was my outlet.
Mm,
And if it wasn't for Mr. Lloyd Barksdale, who is very near and dear to me, is also my mentor. If it wasn't for him, probably most of the kids in the city wouldn't have got the understanding of what it means to be a young man, and more importantly, a young man of color, and set the standard for a lot of us, especially me, when it came down to how you should look at sports.
mm,
So playing basketball and playing sports and being involved with that actually shielded me from a whole lot of the negative things that go on in urban cities. Uh, I grew up in Schoolhouse, probably across the street was Browns Park, might have been the dope capital of the city.
mm.
But 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 understanding that there's spiritual things that are around everything, and I can only speak about this in retrospect.
Mhm.
Being in it at the time, I just knew that I loved something that made me feel good inside, but at the same time brought structure and discipline to a kid that might not have had that order that it needed at that time. So playing basketball became my outlet. Uh, it also taught me that my life is much more than just myself. So being a point guard, you have to understand that I have to be a distributor. I have to be
Mm,
I have to be the main playmaker. I have to be the glue to the team because everything starts from a point guard's perspective. And
mhm.
I'm able to give you these analogies now, but I say this to say when you're doing something and you have pure love for it, it will always show back up in some form of fashion. So basketball in Atlantic City, and at that time, man, I'm not gonna BS you. When I'm talking about everybody that played ball had game, so it made you want to come to the court and with your best because could not, you could not be a, you could not be a player or your name was not going to ring unless you came to the court and you had skills. And again, fundamentals made made me one of the best people in life because to be fundamentally good at something, you have to dedicate a lot of time to it,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And people just pop up and see you play or see you doing things, and they have no idea of those countless hours that you put in trying to achieve or harness your skills. But growing up in Langston as a teenager, again, man, I am so blessed and fortunate to say I didn't miss a beat. I had love from everyone that I came across. Um, Everyone seemed to genuinely care about each other, and it showed at that time. And it's sad that our town has one in the reverse because again, over time, you make a deal with the devil, you're going to get the reaps of, you're going to reap the benefits that you may not want in the end.
Yeah, back me being from Trenton, I remember so many battles you guys had. You remember any of those battles on the court, Atlantic City versus Trenton High? Were you involved in any of those
Oh,
battles?
oh, you better believe it. Uh, you better believe it. But those times were good because you got to respect the fact that there are exceptional people all over the place.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And that's one of those things that sports do. When it comes to Trenton, when we knew that we were going to play Trenton, you better make sure you have brought your A game because you might leave out of there early, defeated,
Mm.
right? And Trenton was a squad that you knew that they all 10 to 12 of them would be able to bring you something because again, naturally you playing against inner city youth that is just as
Mm-hmm.
hungry as you.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that about Trenton because had I not played ball, I might not have ever had a friend or relationships in Trenton.
Mm-hmm. 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 Indeed, indeed. Um, so you were super talented in basketball, which earned you a scholarship. First stop was Delaware State University, playing on there on scholarship, man. Take me back to you arriving at Delaware State and how was it back there, man?
Man, I'm going to tell you an epic story, man, because to be honest with you, my senior year,
Mm.
I wasn't going to graduate because there was I had college prep and every kid that took college prep English had to do a term paper.
Mm-hmm.
But me being who I was, naive and not really structured, I didn't do the term paper.
Hmm.
So it may have been 2.5 weeks left in school. And that's why I always tell people, never talk to me about racism.
Mm.
I don't want to hear it because I've had some chances from some folks that don't look like me. So therefore, you can't really talk to me about it. Mr. Fawns was our principal.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember I was in class. I got called to the office. I'm like, oh man, what did I do? I go in the office. Mr. Fawns said, sit down, Miss Gilliam. I said, yes, what I do? He said, you didn't do your term paper.
Mm.
I talked to Miss Marandino. She's going to give you a week to do your term paper so you can graduate. That right there let me know that there was always someone that was looking out for me, even when I did not know better.
Mm. All
So,
facts.
so when I finished the term paper, the next question Mr. Fawns asked me was, "Where are you going to college?" I said, "Man, I'm not going to college." He said, "What do you mean?" Lo and behold, there was a vice principal named Mr. Williams, and then there was a there was a my was it my junior high vice principal was an alumnus of Dell State, Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Williams and Mr. Milan, right? So somehow they got together, called me down. They said, Frank, you're going to school. And as a matter of fact, tell your grandmother to have you all ready maybe 2 weeks from now, 2 Saturdays from now, we're going to go and we're going to go look at the school. That's how I got on the track to go to Dell State. Now,
Mm.
now, mind you, I'm the first person in my whole entire lineage that had attended college.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm oblivious to college life. As a matter of fact, it's a funny story because when I went to Dell State, I always joke about it, and then I ended up getting like a point 0.2, point 0.3 GPA. I did nothing.
Mm.
And I wasted a lot of my grandmother's money to the point where she said, you're not going back. You're going to get a job. So,
Mm.
and then prior to that, Dell State was supposed to be my entry into college basketball.
Mm.
When I went to Dell State and the two gentlemen I just mentioned took me around and they introduced me to Coach Jones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Coach Jones played the role nicely, this and this and the third. Soon as school started, Coach Jones called me to his office, and the first thing he said to me, "Who do you think you are?"
Mm.
I'm like, "What you mean?" He said, "You can't make anybody, uh, you can't make any boosters pressure me to put you on my team." I said, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about. We were just visiting the school, and they knew that I played ball, and they wanted um, me to be introduced to you. I knew nothing about them trying to pressure you. I don't think they even was doing that. So that kicked the relationship off to be kind of negative because
Wow.
the next meeting we had, I had an earring. He asked me, he was like, "What are you, a faggot or something?" I said, "Man,"
Mm.
I said, "What do you mean, sir?" He said, "You got that earring in your ear." I said, "The earring doesn't have anything to do with how I can play ball." So I weathered all of that. And then tryouts came, and we used to have no practice. We used to have practice at 5 o'clock
Mm-hmm.
a.m. And naturally, I wasn't late because when I came in the gym, everybody was still undressing and getting their things together to start practice. So he told me, "Man, you're late. Run 50 laps." And being hot headed, that I, and being out of inner city, that just rubbed me wrong. And I told him the you know what and walked out. And I never played basketball again at Dell State.
Mm.
Fa Prior to that, before going to Stockton, I went home, went to work, uh, didn't like that. And this is another epic story how I got to Stockton. At that time, I was a young man still trying to find myself, following other people. So I was into um, selling drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is another way how I know that there was always something looking out for me in my best interest because I can remember being in an area of the city. A police officer, I won't say his name, came up to me and said, "Frank, I see you in here. You're doing what's wrong. You're doing wrong things, and I suggest you to leave."
Mm-hmm.
Opposed to him giving, locking me up and giving me a record, we both had a mutual friend that was uh, that was the EOF coordinator at Stockton.
Mm.
When I tell you, my friend, there's nobody else but the creator I can thank for this because by the time by the time he finished saying what he said, I was on the phone talking to a gentleman named Byron. Byron linked me up to Tony Bethel, and that's
Mm-hmm.
how I got into Stockton that summer at the EOF.
Mm. All praise to the Most High, man.
Yes, indeed. And when you know it's your time, you know it's your time because when I got to Stockton, basketball was the furthest thing from my mind because around that same time, I was my son's my first son's mother was pregnant.
Mm.
So it was a do or die thing. It was a thing that, well, Frank, you have to stop BSing. You got a kid coming in the world, and you have to get serious about some things. And I took school so serious that you would have thought that I wasn't the same person, opposed to having a poor GPA at Dell State to being on the dean's list at Stockton.
Mm-hmm.
And that also led to the opportunity of me being one of the first students to to do a white paper on the criminal justice system in South Africa after apartheid.
Mm.
So that led me on that journey. And then once I hit the motherland, and then I visited Robben Island, stood uh, in Mandela cell, something again spiritually came over me. To when I came back, I was totally conscious about what it is that I wanted to do, and that was to help people
Mm.
in any way that I could. So prior along that same timeline, um, I'm now volunteering, coaching basketball,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it was always my intention to actually pay it forward because Mr. Barksdale paid it forward for me and it
Indeed.
opened up doors.
Mm-hmm.
It made it easy for me to do it. Plus, it was something that I love and it was something that I knew how to do. But more importantly, it was something that I knew that could help young inner city kids be introduced to basketball, but also be introduced to life. Because if you teach it right, it's a microcosm of life. Basketball is.
All facts.
So that led me to volunteering, and yeah, that's how we got there. Then, fortunately, I was able to make my grandmother proud because I got my BA in criminal justice and I got my minor in African American history. So in the end, I made her proud because I wanted to make sure that I never failed her. That's the only person that I held so high in esteem that when people ask me today, who is it that made the most impact on you, and I have to say it was my grandmother, hands down, because you don't get no better anything for me personally. You don't get any better human being than that. So I like to consider her as my living and growing up with an angel.
Indeed. So then, what made you want to get into the political world, and what was your goals when you first jumped into it?
I got into politics from from someone telling me no.
Mm.
Um, I was it was a program that I was fortunate enough to link up with um, Dr. Wade Noble, which was the head black psychologist, um, dean of black psychology at the University of San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
He happens to be the grandfather of my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this is also an interesting story because it was his books that I utilized to back my papers and my philosophies,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then to grow up and become graduate, and then all of a sudden, this gentleman who I looked at as brilliant happened to be my daughter's grandfather,
Mm.
right? So he and I linked up, and we got this pro. He had this program called Hawk, and it meant higher achievement, wisdom, and knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it was intended to go into urban areas and teach people of color about their heritage while being introduced to sports. So long story short, I came home thinking that I had a goodie in my bag and that this would be a no brainer. Uh, I went to the mayor, which was Mayor Langford at the time, and said, "Man, I think I got something that can help impact the youth's lives in the city." And naturally, he said, "Okay, go talk to my director of recreation," and set up the meeting. We go in, resume and my packet and everything laid out.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy insulted me with, mind you, I'm thinking of me getting my first consultant contract.
Mm-hmm.
And he violates me and say, well, you can become a rec aide. I said, how do we,
Mm.
again, still being um, a little feisty, I balled my resume up and threw it at him. And I think it was during that week I was looking, reading the paper, and it had mayoral race and council at large. Um, I think it was 6 months out. So I went and talked to my family, talked to some folks, and said, you know what? I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring for council at large,
Mm.
right? Simply because I thought change could only come from me getting into politics. Because again, prior to that, politics meant nothing for me. And
Okay.
if I can speak candidly, I didn't vote for anyone until I voted for myself. That was the first time I exercised a vote because at that time, again, being uneducated to a point, I did not feel comfortable with anyone representing me because I looked at it if they couldn't do it like I could. So the first
Mm.
time I cast it, a vote was for myself, and that was 2008. Was blessed to um, get put on Mayor Langford's ticket. We won. Um, that was a good experience because I tell people I used um, politics the same way I used and looked at college,
Mm-hmm.
because each term is 4 years. So me stepping into the political arena, the first 4 years, I considered me getting a bachelor's degree in political science.
Mm.
Right. The second four, I began to learn more and started to spread my wings. That was me getting my master's in political science. And then naturally, on the trajectory that I was setting up, my next four was to be me doing my doctorates as the mayor.
Mm. So this was your plan when you first got into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
Because again, I'm going into a space where I know nothing about it. So I had to study it. You
Mm-hmm.
have to learn that stuff. And I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
fortunate enough to have a mentor who taught me the nuances of political life and what politics are about. I had to learn all that on the fly. So, but I did have sense enough to know that I don't know this stuff. You're going to have to educate yourself. So the spirit led me to look at it like that, like a going through 4 years of college.
How did you um deal with the attention and the power once you became councilman at large? Because I had a brother who soon passed away, Mike Pentella, and he was councilman at large in Trenton, which was it's the capital, but it's a smaller city in terms of operating like y'all was operating. And I saw the attention and stuff that came with him being in that kind of position when Doug Palmer was the mayor. How did you handle that? What did you do to try to keep yourself humble in that kind of state?
Um, I never really had an ego.
Okay.
I don't have one now.
Mm-hmm.
I consider myself being a student of life. I'm teachable.
Okay.
So and I went in there for every other purpose besides myself. I went in there trying to
Mm.
actually change the trajectory of the city for the city's sake, for the people. I took that to heart. That wasn't
Mm-hmm.
something that I played on people's emotion, and I believe that's what allowed me to be a mayor, because people knew what Frank Gilliam stood for, and to get in there to become someone else would have been detrimental to my growth period.
Mm.
So it, I went in it with the people, and the people already knew that we were in lockstep. The people really felt that I was the person that they can depend on, because they knew that I was a straight shooter. I'm still a straight shooter. They knew that whatever I said, I was going to do, and if it was something I couldn't, that was that was what it was. But you asked a very good question, because um, I think that, and I'm jumping forward, but I'm going to bring it back. I think that's why I end up leaving politics the way I did, because it wasn't a space where I was supposed to be for the long haul.
Mm. I respect that. I respect that. I respect that. So
You,
now you go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, because it's one thing to say you want something. It's another thing to realize what you get may not be what you want.
Mm. Been there.
You know what
Understand
I mean?
exactly. Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying.
Because sometimes our wants, right, put us in a conundrum, because it's not what God has planned.
Indeed. 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 So then you in the councilman at large. Then you get in the big seat, man. Mayor of Atlantic City. Um, was this your goal from the beginning? And was it everything you expected when you got in there?
Again, no, it wasn't my goal. It morphed into that. And it was very organic because, again, I had no clue or ideology about politics when I stepped in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so busy trying to learn and figure out what I was doing, it wasn't about me taking a mayor seat. That's why it was such a surprise to people because I, I came out of nowhere
Mm.
in a sense. But to answer your question, no, I did not have intentions. Situations caused it to go that way, and then I'm a firm believer. If you're a leader, um, when it's your turn to step up, you better step up because you might not get that chance again. And there was a window, like I said, um, the gentleman that we had as the mayor at that time, Don Guardian. Um, I wasn't okay with the things that he was doing. I wasn't okay with how he was running the city. And I come from a background is either you complain and sit on the sideline or you get in and do something about
Indeed.
it. In
Now
this
let's
case,
take. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
in this case, I was already in it, and naturally, I had um, I had met the plateau um, on council because I had did 8 years 8 years, 2 terms. I had did 8 years, so I was
Mm.
saying that again, I was still on my trajectory.
Mm. Indeed. So let's take it back to this moment, man, because I want to relive it.
So help me God. So help me God. Congratulations.
Atlantic City has a new mayor tonight. Frank Gilliam was surrounded by family at his swearing-in ceremony this afternoon. The Democrat is a former Atlantic City councilman and native of the resort town. 3 council at-large members were also.
Now, at that moment in that room after swearing in, what's going through your mind and what's going through your body, brother?
Um, naturally, it's electrifying, right? Because it's a
Mm.
win. You know what I mean?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And again, that anybody that plays sports know when a victory is a victory,
Mm-hmm.
and when you win, especially how we won. Um, Not a lot of people know. I only had really 3 core people
Mm-hmm.
during that whole process. That doesn't mean that I didn't have other people helping me. I'm just saying there was 3 core people who put that whole thing together, and all 3 of us was never ran a campaign.
Mm.
So again, I knew there was a higher power working in our favor because again, how do you win a mayoral campaign? I mean, a mayoral race, and you never been there before. There's no
Mm.
mentor. There's no anything. But the feeling that I felt was like I arrived.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's nothing. It's nothing. There's no feeling like growing up in a place and then all of a sudden that place you grew up in, you have control of its destiny to a degree.
Yeah, so you're in the big seat now, and you look out one of those windows and see like the whole landscape of the casino and this and that. Like, when did everything really hit you? Like, I'm here. Like, I got to get to work.
It hit me the first week that of my mayorship.
Mm.
The first week we had one of the biggest snowstorms. uh, one of the biggest snowstorms to the point that we had to call the state to help because we didn't have enough equipment. And that same week, uh, Jeffrey's Tower caught fire, which is one of the old folks' homes,
Mm-hmm.
senior citizen homes. So I had to juggle those 2 things. Well, they say baptism by fire.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was. I had those 2 things: the storm and the seniors needing to find a place to stay for a month. And what's beautiful about that is because I had the relationships with the casinos and the certain business owners, we were able to put people, especially our seniors, we were able to put them in comfortable abodes for that time period. So that was when I first realized that, man, this thing's on you.
Mm.
And then the second thing would be giving the state of the address to the city, laying out what my goals and my plans are for the city moving forward.
Now, once you got in and you see this going on, did it give you a newfound respect for the position? Because I know when you not there yet and you looking at a certain situation, a lot of times we can say to it, man, I could do that. All I need is the opportunity. But then when we get in that seat, we like, yo, this is a lot more than I thought of when I was on the outside looking in. Did it give you a newfound respect for the position?
Oh, naturally. Anything you go into that you don't have any experience from, um, if you're trying to do it right, you have to give it respect. You know
Mm.
what I mean? You have to sit down and ponder on what it is that you're doing, what you intend on doing, because again, you don't know what a mayor's job is until you're a mayor.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So
I like that.
when I got there, but I also learned something very critical and pivotal, was that no city flourishes without you having a solid relationship with the legislation, with the
Mm.
legislative body. And I didn't have that because of egos and jealousy and things of that nature, and certain people feeling like um, I surpassed them and it should have been their turn. When
Mm.
when I told them that this isn't a union house, there's no seniority in politics. The people decide what they want through casting their vote. And again, at that time, I was able to get the votes.
Indeed, indeed. Um, Now you in that seat, the attention rush had to be a lot. A lot of people coming at you wanting things, a lot of people promising you things. A lot of people want to be around you. Looking back at it in retrospect now, did you see a change in your mindset or your behaviors during that time?
Most definitely. And
Mm.
if you don't check those things, um, they will ruin you.
Mm.
Politics is not a place for morality.
Mm.
They're perceived to be about that, but politics um, is a game, and it's a serious game because lives are um, being altered by the decisions that we make. But politics is something that feeds to one's ego,
Mm.
and if you don't have an ego, and it's kind of weird that I hear you ask me that question, because um, there was a time when people used to say, "Well, what do you want to do next?" I said, "Man, I would much rather be in the private sector, right?"
Mm.
Because I found that in finally learning what that seat represents, it doesn't represent my way of living.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I'm just not a person. I don't think anyone should be a person who allows someone blatantly to do the wrong thing, and then you act like they didn't never do that.
Wow. Definitely tests your morals and what you stand for and things of that nature.
Yeah, and so some of that also too was seeping in, which is why I believe that again God had to slow me down and sit me down to recalibrate, because he knew that wasn't the true Frank Gilliam.
Which brings me to the point 10 years in, I mean 10 months in, correct that, 10 months into your being the mayor, everything just crashed. Take me back to that moment when the raid came from the FBI and like that morning and everything, like what happened?
It, I still can't give you a clear answer to that, because it still seems so surreal, right? You
Mhm.
you grow up being taught follow the golden rules, try to be a good person, and be your brother's keeper or what have you, right? And to have the feds knock on my door was almost like a mind blowing, because I never really did anything illegal to have them want, for me to even think the feds would be knocking on my door.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Everything I did politically and in a sense in my private life was giving something, right?
Mm.
There's not an entity, as a matter of fact, that most people would tell you Frank Gilliam doesn't ask for anything for himself. His ask has always been for someone else or the community.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like as long as I made sure that I upheld this seat to the highest regard, that I would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But to have your home rated um, based on my private life is baffling to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
I understand it. I respect it. As a matter of fact, I needed it.
Mm.
You know what I
Mm.
mean? I needed it. It was something that was set along my path and destiny. And again, this is what I try to teach people. It's how you look at a situation that will determine what you get out of it.
Mm.
I never for a moment blamed anyone else. I never for a moment screamed, "Woe is me." I took it on the chin and I asked myself this critical question: what is the universe trying to tell you, Frank Gilliam?
Indeed, indeed. Now, my next question is, how quick did it take for all those people that was around you cheering you on to vanish?
As quick as your eye blinks.
Mm.
And
Mm.
but see, again, this is how I live my life, and it's fortunate that I had it in me before all this stuff happens. Without it, I'll probably be lost and turned out.
Mm.
I was taught that you are the sole responsible person of your own actions. Whatever comes across my path. So, although you take a heat check to see who's there, I wasn't depending on anybody to be there because I didn't depend on anyone to get there.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And because I didn't owe anybody anything, and I also knew that it was something that I never truly had as a part of my vision or goals, it didn't bother me because it
Mm.
wasn't really something that I wanted so badly that it could shift me. Now, did I like how I left out of there? Absolutely not. Would I like to have had a chance or opportunity to do some things that I knew I was capable of? Yes. But none of that means anything because I'm a firm believer God puts you where you belong, no matter how it feels to you or not.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. So then you get sentenced, and now you're a federal inmate, man. Take us to that moment when the reality hit you that you was really in there.
Well, the reality hit me heavy um, the moment this whole thing transpired, right? Because when you know that there's another human being that has the ability to shape your future and to making a decision on your freedom, you don't have to wait to go to prison to realize your life has changed.
Mm.
Because it's not a natural feeling for anybody to have to wait to see if their freedom will be compromised or not.
Mm.
You know what I mean? When you know that you are you're in a system that really wants to feed off of you, you, you know that you're in a it's a whole different level of understanding. But in terms of being in prison, before I went to prison, I had made up my mind with me and myself and God that I'm going to use this time to figure out what it is that he's trying to teach me. So during this whole ordeal, yes, I had my challenges. Yes, I had my questions. Yes, I had my ups and downs, but I still had a solid base on staying spiritual and seeking answers, opposed to crying and whining about my situation.
What was a daily schedule like in that kind of situation?
Um, Again, I was fortunate. Uh, I was fortunate to go to a camp, so I
Okay.
never really was behind bars. And besides, the first 10 days, because
Okay.
during COVID, uh, you had to you had to be isolated before they let you into the general population. So for the first 10 days, I was in a cell by myself, which was also an experience within itself, because there's nothing like not having the ability to get up and go and do as you please.
Mm. Now you went there. You in the camp. Take me to the moment of clarity that hit you when you knew, all right, this has a purpose to it.
I believe it was one night, man, because I went through several legal paths because all I did was write.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Free wrote sometimes, wrote some of my thoughts, uh, journaled my experience during the day and days being in there. But naturally, that's why they say write stuff down. When you crystallize it, some of that stuff can end up coming into reality.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up. It was this one night, man, and I'm laying here, and I'm laying on the bunk, and it kept hitting me so heavily that I had to get up and write it down. And that was synchronized souls,
Mm.
right? I had no idea what it meant, what it would be, or even why that those two words came to me. But now I know clearly because, again, my purpose on this planet is to solve someone else's problem,
Mm.
right? And that's when synchronized soul came into play in terms of the title, right? It took another 2 to 3 years, right, to
Mm-hmm.
put the programming behind it.
Mm.
And that was also another spiritual journey in doing the research because synchronized souls and the programs that it had was actually uh, the same route that I took to make sure I transitioned into a better me. So
Mm.
I took a lot of my upbringing, which is my grandmother used to always say, "Don't be so stubborn not to learn something new."
Mm-hmm.
Right? I equate that's a growth mindset. You have to be open minded, right? So I created a course for a growth mindset. And then naturally, my grandmother used to say, "You're not good at everything. You have weaknesses at something," right? That's me. That's her teaching me how to recognize my strengths and weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
So I created a course around strengths and weaknesses. And then naturally, doing anything throughout my life, I had to have goals. My younger years, my goal was to be a great athlete. After that, my goal was to be a great civic leader. After that, my goal was to be a great mayor. But none of those things equated to being a great me,
Mm.
an awesome human being in me. So again, I had to put a program together that recognizes SMART goals, which is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So that equated me to creating what I call, BDP, Boogie Down Production. I
Mm-hmm.
call I call it PDP.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody should have a personal development plan,
Mm.
right? And when I started putting that personal development plan together, it naturally made me realize, okay, Frank, you're going to have to learn how to express this. So I created a communication course, which then extended to, well, you're trying to do all these things, you're going to have to be able to manage time. So that had me create a time management course. And then naturally, as we evolve from our old self to our new self, we have to cultivate healthy habits. So I created a healthy habits course. So that's how Synchronized Souls with Growth and Greatness Aligned was birthed.
Now, before you actually got that whole process together, when you was in the camp and you was making your transformation, did you have a time of purging? I know when I went through my transformation, I had to purge like a lot of my past behaviors, a lot of the things I did. I had to confess a lot of my mishaps, a lot of my character defects. I had to confess to God. I had to really break, and it broke me, and that's what got that stuff out of me, and I was able to become this person to do what I do now. Did you have any kind of process like that when you was in that situation?
Most definitely. I used that,
Mm.
that I, that's why that's when I used the pen to paper.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I wrote down every feeling that I had.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And more importantly, I wrote them down knowing that Frank Gilliam was not on the trajectory to be the Frank Gilliam that God was familiar with.
Mm.
So I had to break down and say, Frank, you were becoming morally bankrupt
Mm.
as a politician, and going through that period where I understand what I was becoming. It was good for me to sit there and stew in it enough to actually allow the forge of the fire to have me come out better and stronger than when I went in.
Did you have to go make any amends to people that you had hurt in the process?
Most definitely. Um,
Mm.
one of the hardest parts, one of the hardest things was I felt like I let my family down. And I'm
Mm.
talking about my whole entire family, the city, just
Mm.
not my immediate, the city, because they were depending on me to do something for them. And naturally, um, my internal family, I most definitely let down and I hurt. So I asked them all, would they forgive me? And what was interesting about their response was, "You didn't do anything to us.
Mm.
We stand by you and we stand near you." And one thing I could say about the whole process is, um, if there's a silver lining in it, I got my flowers while I was alive.
All praises.
You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
I had almost 500 letters speaking about what I've done, and I've heard some um, testimony even during my sentencing. I heard
Mm-hmm.
some testimony that I had no idea that I had an impact on certain people's lives, their children's lives,
Mm-hmm.
and what I meant to them as a family member. And
Mm.
these are people from all walks of life. So it was it was it was great because again, even even the donors that gave me donations for my organization told the feds, "I don't want that money back.
Mm.
He hasn't. As far as we're concerned, he's pretty much done what we want him to do with our funds. He's taking kids to Duke. He's taking kids to University of North Carolina. They're playing. You know what it
Mm-hmm.
takes
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to do those things. They're not free,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but again, I don't squabble about that because I know that there was a purpose and there's a reason, and I'm sitting here as a disciple of the Most High And if I didn't go through what I went through, I might not have found myself.
Indeed. Now let's take it to the new Frank, man. I'm gonna tell you what I saw when you sent me this picture, because I definitely didn't expect this. But when I saw it, the first thing came to my mind was humility. Like to see you with that, with the Dr. Seuss thing on in the book, that's the first thing. And I saw the smile you had, and but that's me talking too much, man. You tell me, take me to the new Frank, man.
The new Frank is better than ever. I went from being a politician to an inmate to a doctor to a whole being.
Mm.
You know what I mean? That's what we stand on. My mission now is to pretty much help you achieve the change that aligns with your purpose. That's my mission, to help anyone on the planet to achieve what they want as long as it's aligned with their purpose. And that's my way of saying I'm doing my godly duties, because my mandate might be different from yours, but we still have the same path that we're supposed to go on. And it should be a path that represents what God chose for us to do, opposed to what man says we should do.
And this one I knew, like, you was real, because we didn't always have the best conversation early on when we first met, right? Over the phone. You know what I mean? I remember the phone call I got, and I reached out to a couple people because I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, who this dude? So I reached out to a couple people and stuff, and we got past that. But I received a text message from this number that I didn't recognize, and I'm like, and it was you, and this was after all of the stuff you went through. I didn't know it was you though. I'm reading the text message, and I just felt the spirit in the text.
Mm-hmm.
The spirit of, like, you was a totally different person. And I'm like, I'm reading this joint, I'm like, I felt it, and I'm like, that man found God where he was at. I felt it because I've been there.
Right.
And I could tell through the language in the text, through the feeling in the text, that you had a spiritual awakening. And it changed you into a whole nother person. You know what I'm saying? And I want to commend you on really going on that journey, and having the courage to sit on this platform and talk about it, man.
I got to attribute, you know what I mean, that to you, because nothing happens with just one individual doing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they say in our neighborhoods, real recognizes real, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's naturally what we're always going to find ourselves in. We're going to find ourselves around the people that have the same vibrational energy we do,
Mm-hmm.
right? I like to measure and gauge what I am and who I am by the people who I actually have relationships with, the people I talk to, and the people who talk to me about the things that they went through. Because again, this podcast wouldn't be in existence had you not have to go through your own revelation.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So when you find somebody that is really saying the same thing, your company name is Pain to Purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is Synchronized Souls. They're the same thing.
Mm.
You know what I mean? They're the same thing. They're intended to do the same thing. Reach people that may not be in their best selves, and more importantly, be a light for someone that's in need of light when it's time for them to open his eyes and realize it's his chance or her chance to become a new person.
Indeed, man, indeed. And in closing, what I like to always do is give you a chance to give some shout outs to some of the people out there that really was with you through this journey, man.
That's easy. I want to thank my family for always holding me down. I want to thank my mentors, and I want to thank all those folks that prayed for me, and all those folks that had well wishes for me, and that came through big time for me, because whether you see a person or not, and you know when somebody's pulling for you,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean, and you know who's hating on you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you don't have to necessarily be around those people all the time, but you know where your strong folks are. And I want to just thank those people that know Frank Gilliam and just still believe in Frank Gilliam. I want to big up them, but most importantly, I want to big up my creator, because without him, there's no us. And it's real easy. Fall in love with yourself, and you'll begin to fall in love with life.
All praises, man. Frank, man, I want to thank you for coming on, bro, and
Thank you.
letting us hear your story, man. And I'm sure after I get done, I'm gonna send this to my app for the clips, and I'm
Okay.
gonna send you an email. I'm gonna send you a file with all of the clips in it, and you can
Okay.
use them at your thing. I'm gonna be using them to death. You're gonna be tired of me posting clips on my Facebook, but that's what I do. And I want to thank you, man, and I pray that you stay on this journey and touch some souls and let them know that they got a purpose, brother.
Absolutely. But before we go, let me plug Synchronized Souls, SYNCSOLUS .mykajabi.com. That's the website that you can go and get linked up with Synchronized Souls.
Say that again. Say that again, brothers. For the people out there that didn't hear it, say it again.
It's syncsouls
Mm-hmm.
.mykajabi.com.
Okay. Okay. Can you spell Kajabi? Go ahead. My Kajabi. Yeah, spell it out for him.
KAJABI.com.
Okay. All right, man. Thanks for coming on, brother. I definitely appreciate this, man.
All right, you be well, man.
All right, all praises, man.
Peace.
Yeah, man. I was Frank Gilliam, man, and what a time, man. And I love the fact how he dug in and he wasn't afraid to touch those topics, and hopefully we pray that his story will touch some souls, man. Tune in next week as we bring on another special guest from Pain to Purpose podcast. This is Mike Melton, and enjoy the rest of your night. Shalom.